He will never grace their chamber again. But Peter Mandelson's misconduct means punishment won't stop there. The government's determined to strip Peter Mandelson of his peerage. It's rushing to draft a special personal law that would make him Mr. Mandelson again. Keir Starmer told Cabinet Ministers that he was appalled at the email revelations. He said Peter Mandelson's conduct passing on government information had been disgraceful. Saying he couldn't recall receiving thousands of pounds would be seen as gobsmacking by the public. He also said he thought there were more revelations to come. As Cabinet finished, the government announced it was helping the police with their inquiries and had sent them a dossier of potential sensitive information Peter Mandelson shared with Jeffrey Epstein.
He's joined us today on his birthday.
Gordon Brown sent his own submission to the Metropolitan Police, an email which he felt showed an inexcusable and unpatriotic leak of information to Jeffrey Epstein at the time of the banking crisis, in which he first reported to the government last September. Back then, he was told investigators couldn't find evidence of wrongdoing in government emails. It's now clear that was because Mandelson's tip-offs were conducted on his private email account.
I think we're going to need a public inquiry. The threat to national security that Lord Mandelson posed, giving away secrets to someone who could benefit at a time when our country was in grave peril, was quite outrageous.
The Tories are demanding immediate disclosure on what checks were conducted on Peter Mandelson before his appointment as ambassador to the United States. They plan a Commons vote on that tomorrow.
What I want to know is why what appears to have happened, a lot of the vetting was waved away so that Peter Mandelson could be given this role ahead of many other people who had been working in the Foreign Office who would have been more qualified to do so.
The government's now trying to rush out a law that would strip Peter Mandelson of his peerage. German members of the royal family were the last people this happened to in 1917. They lived the rest of their lives without their British titles following a public outcry, because they'd fought against Britain in the First World War.
Back in 1963, the publication which did more than any other to cover the Profumo affair was a young magazine called Private Eye. And the Eye has been following the Epstein case for many years as well, and its editor, Ian Hislop, is with me now in the studio. Ian, great to have you here, and I've got a copy of your new Private Eye. We'll read some of the jokes out in a moment. But, first of all, sort of sense of history. Do you think this really does, is at the same level as the Profumo scandal?
Well, I think there are two things. One is Profumo was a more junior minister than Peter Mandelson in the heart of New Labour, and if it was the end of that Tory establishment regime, this has got to be really embarrassing for the whole New Labour project. I mean, Mandelson is going to be arrested, isn't he? It's fairly clear that the full criminal investigation is going to be very serious for him.
Well, all we know, I suppose, this evening is that the police are carrying out an investigation.
Yes.
They've confirmed that.
Yes. But it is jaw-dropping, and I think because this story, Profumo broke and exploded, this one's been going for a very long time, and everyone involved pretends they had absolutely no idea. Keir Starmer, all his advisors, all these businessmen, everyone's saying we had no idea that Epstein was in some way a paedophile, whereas in fact 2008 is the date of the case, and we ran a cover about this in 2011.
I was going to ask you, when was the sort of cloud the size of a man's hand suddenly appearing and you thought this Epstein guy is a big story?
It was over the then Duchess of York, now not Duchess anymore,
Fergie.
And Fergie. And it was a story that she'd accepted £15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein. He was then convicted paedophile and financier, who everyone was pretending was absolutely fine. And we ran a cover with Sarah and her two daughters, and a voice saying, you know, I'll give you £15,000. And she was saying, is that for Beatrice or both of them? Now, at the time, this was considered harsh and offensive.
Yeah.
But it was trying to make the point that everyone was pretending they didn't know. This was on the front of a newsstand. And then in the Epstein file dump yesterday, there is reference to Private Eye, an absolute rag of a publication, says Epstein's lawyer. Great.
So you're happy about that?
I'm fine with the tribute.
And let's talk a little bit about Peter Mandelson himself, because he has been, I'm not sure how many times he's been on the cover of Private Eye, but I would hazard a guess it's a few.
Yes, but never in his underpants.
Never in his underpants.
This is going to be a first this week.
He's in his underpants on your front page, and the caption says, "I've let myself down, my party down, and my trousers down." I'm afraid that is the picture. You don't really want to see it too closely.
No, and I was pleased to see that Starmer himself used the phrase, "he's let the country down." We didn't know he was going to do our joke, but, fair enough.
Let me ask you about Mandelson, because there have been so many Mandelson stories over the years. Are you surprised that after all of that, Keir Starmer brought him back and made him ambassador to Washington?
Yeah, I was absolutely amazed. It seemed to me an incredible lack of judgment and also lack of political nous. I mean, he'd already blown up twice. This is third time lucky for the public, and let's hope. I mean, he is Prince of Darkness, but let's hope the stake is firmly in the heart this time, because there is no justification, knowing what he knew, for appointing him to be ambassador. And also, I mean, he does seem to have had a very important advisory role in the whole Starmer project. And that's embarrassing.
You said it goes to the heart of New Labour because, of course, Neil Kinnock brings us in, first of all, as communications director. And back in the days when he had longer hair and a moustache and all of that. The Red Rose Man, the current king, called him then. And then he was very important to Tony Blair, not just as a PR guy, but he was the third man, as he put it himself, alongside Gordon Brown and Tony Blair in creating the project.
In his modest autobiography, he referred to himself as the third most important person. And I think he meant the most important as the mediator between these two other people, Blair, Brown, who also had something to do with it. I mean, he's phenomenally arrogant. And by the end of that particular set of disasters, he was saying, "I'm very relaxed about the filthy rich." And then Epstein is both filthy and rich. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious what he was doing.
You are, I suppose, our kind of national analyst of corruption. You're the guy who studies corruption. How important do you think the very, very rich part of this is? In other words, it's not necessarily about sex. It's about the kind of mesmeric, hypnotic power of people who are inordinately rich.
Yes, and people like Mandelson just fall in love with it. They fall in love with the money, and the amounts that he was offered by Epstein they're not huge. Part of you thinks, you did this for this little money? But it's disgraceful. I mean, why couldn't he pay for his husband's osteopathy course? 10 grand. Why can't you pay for that yourself? There comes a point where they just believe they're entitled to all of this money. And then, full on, they believe they're entitled to help out their friends. I have to say, it is gobsmacking, the passing on of the memo to a financier.
And we know that he denies a lot of this, but can I put it to
Yes, he's got selective amnesia, hasn't he?
He's got very severe selective
remember any of the bits where he might have behaved very, very badly.
Can I just put it to you that maybe what he's doing when he's leaking stuff from the cabinet is nothing more than showing off?
That's possible, but if you're showing off by saying, "Oh, there's a massive asset sale," and you're sending documents about which particular assets might be on sale to a man who boasts about being a financier, it might be something much more serious. I don't want to get into any trouble here in terms of contempt, but I mean the evidence of those emails, and I presume what Gordon Brown is going to testify, is pretty serious.
He's an extraordinary character in all sorts of ways. He's kind of mesmeric and hypnotic. I don't know if you ever came to any of the old Private Eye lunches or if you debated stuff with him, but he is very, very gossipy and in many ways an intriguing character. Do you think he's learned anything from this?
No, I mean, he's clearly learnt nothing at all. I mean, his reactions were, he tried to bluff it out. He tried to say, it was a long time ago and I deeply regret it. He offered absolutely no sympathy with the victims until he was told he hadn't offered any, and then he made another statement. He has at every point tried to front this out, and the "I don't remember anything" is the latest thing, and he thinks it will work. He's done this before.
I know he has done it. I should say that we wanted Peter Mandelson to be sitting there in that chair beside you to explain himself, but for whatever reason he was unable to join us, as they say.
And this isn't just revenge on my part. I mean, in one of the Epstein emails that was released, Peter Mandelson suggests to Epstein that he needs a good libel lawyer because of the allegations that have come up and that we were making. And in this issue, we say, over a picture of him in his underpants, he's going to need some briefs, some decent briefs.
Some decent briefs. You say, oh no, he's into M&S, you say, in this front page.
He's in serious trouble.
He's in very serious trouble. There's one other aspect of this that struck me today, Ian, which is that on this side of the Atlantic, reputations are crashing down. There's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, never mind Peter Mandelson, never mind Keir Starmer's naivety in appointing him, all of that. You look across the Atlantic, and there seems to be absolutely very few ripples from any of this. The Clintons are going, I think, to testify to Congress, but Trump seems to have got away with his close connection with Epstein, which seems to me to have been closer, actually, than Peter Mandelson's connection with Epstein.
Yes, but I do think that it says at least there is still some shame this side of the pond, and that we have taken this seriously. Because there is nothing particularly conclusive about Trump, which is what everybody wanted, the story there is not as big as it is here. But we're laying full into the businessman on this side of the Atlantic who, Richard Branson's behaviour and his suggestions to the disgraced paedophile about how he could restore his reputation, they do not read well. And we are going for this. On the other side of the Atlantic, it's all very muted.
You are a reporter, not a predictor, but let me ask you to predict a little bit about tomorrow when the Conservatives are going to be in the House of Commons pursuing this. And the line that they are going for very strongly is that Keir Starmer was more than naive in appointing him in the first place. And you hear this from Labour MPs as well. And that really something fundamental has gone wrong at the heart of Number 10, which allowed this to develop in this way. What do you think?
Well, I think the Tories are going to relish, after the PPE scandals, which were fairly corrupt, let's be honest. So they are going to relish the chance to call someone else corrupt and to say at the heart of government there is a deep malaise. I mean, they're not wrong, but quite whether this is the most important political moment in the history of political moments, I don't know.
All right, on that
there has never been a better masterclass in failing upwards than Peter Mandelson.
Well, it was a most terrible mistake.
In 1998, he resigned as Trade Secretary over an undeclared £373,000 personal loan from a colleague. But just 10 months later, he was appointed Northern Ireland Secretary. In 2001, he resigned again from the cabinet, following accusations he used his position to influence a passport application. But by 2004, he was back again in public life, this time as a European Commissioner. Throughout the 2000s, Mandelson was accused of inappropriate links with rich and powerful figures, which he denied. But in 2008, Gordon Brown announced Mandelson would return to government as business secretary, even granting him a peerage. Again and again, he was welcomed back into the heart of government.
I was in a hurry to return this party to where it should be.
And this is before we even get to his links with Epstein, which, although known by Sir Keir Starmer and everyone else, didn't prevent him being selected as US ambassador in late 2024. Less than a year later, the Labour grandee was sacked after emails emerged showing he had encouraged Epstein to fight for early release from prison in 2008. And things only got worse when 3 million more documents dropped last week, revealing he appeared to lobby government ministers at Epstein's request, accepted thousands of pounds from the paedophile via transfers to his partner, and was pictured in his underwear. It seemed like the final nail in the coffin of a scandal-riddled career. Or was it?
I'd have never appointed him.
Even after Mandelson was dismissed as ambassador, he remained in the Labour Party until he himself resigned amid increasing public pressure. And only after more details emerged in this latest tranche of files is he finally giving up his peerage.
To retire from the House, effective from 4th February.
But how and why did Labour leader after Labour leader from Blair to Brown to Starmer, continue to welcome a man with such a checkered past into the heart of government, again and again. At the very least, it shows a Labour Party that is in the thrall of the Prince of Darkness. At worst, it reveals an extraordinary acceptance for his behaviour. So, will this finally mark the end for Peter Mandelson? This time, it must be an emphatic yes. There has
Welcome to Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips. Peter Mandelson and I met for the first time almost exactly 50 years ago on a march protesting against apartheid. It's no secret here in Westminster that over the following 3 decades he and I worked together, first as student activists, then as television journalists and as elected politicians. He's appeared more than once on this programme. We were and are still friends. His political career was long and illustrious. Mine was brief and disastrous. It's a friend's privilege to tell you that you are ill-suited to a role, even that you are a complete idiot. 20 years ago, Peter was honest enough to make it clear to me that my lack of tact and distaste for compromise meant that I'd be better suited to journalism than party politics. I have not spoken personally to Lord Mandelson about the release this weekend of documents, messages, photographs and videos related to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. He was invited to join us this morning, but declined. However, he has told this programme that neither he nor his husband, Ronaldo Avila da Silva, has any record or recollection of receiving payments in 2003 or 2004, or knows whether the documentation is authentic. He does accept that Ronaldo received a loan of $10,000 from Epstein whilst he, Mandelson, was a senior cabinet minister. And he acknowledges that in the same period, Epstein was amongst those who lobbied him on important policy matters. There's no suggestion that Lord Mandelson's done anything unlawful, but I would claim the friend's privilege to tell Peter that he has been, at best, naive and foolish, at worst, greedy and duplicitous. Whatever is true, as far as politics and public office are concerned, for Peter Mandelson, this is the end. The question now is whether the price of his misjudgment is to be paid only by the man himself, or whether those who trusted him and elevated him to the peerage and to one of the highest diplomatic posts available should also share in his ignominy.
Known as the Prince of Darkness, Peter Mandelson has spent 4 decades at the heart of British politics.
He's an unbelievably effective political operator.
A supremo of spin in the New Labour 90s, he helped get Tony Blair to number 10 and was one of his key allies in government. And although Mandy was never far from controversy...
No, I don't feel that my enemies have won.
He had a knack for finding his way back to power, despite being forced out 3 times in 4 decades.
You mean 3rd time lucky?
So, who is Peter Mandelson?
Calls for Lord Mandelson to forfeit his peerage after the latest claims over his links to Jeffrey Epstein.
And has his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein consigned the Prince of Darkness to the political shadows forever? Peter Mandelson has Labour in his blood. This was his grandfather, Herbert Morrison, a cabinet minister in Clement Attlee's 1945 government. He joined the party in its 1980s wilderness years, when Margaret Thatcher was all-powerful. So after Neil Kinnock's bitter 1992 defeat to the Tories under John Major, Peter Mandelson decided Labour had to modernise and backed Tony Blair over the man everyone thought would get the top job, Gordon Brown. With Mandelson as the so-called third musketeer, the trio papered over the tensions and worked together on the new Labour vision. Rewarded with a landslide victory back in 1997. And Mandelson got a cabinet job and was eventually made Trade Secretary. But it didn't last long. The following year, it turned out he'd got a secret loan of over £300,000 from one of his ministerial colleagues, Geoffrey Robinson. So he had to resign. Less than a year later, he was back, this time as Northern Ireland Secretary. But scandal came a-knocking once more in 2001, with misconduct allegations over a passport application for 2 Indian businessmen. Once again, he had to go.
Excuse me. I am today resigning from the government.
And although an inquiry later cleared him of wrongdoing, the affair seriously damaged Labour in the run-up to that year's general election. But they won, and so did he, holding on to his seat in Hartlepool on an emotional night.
I am a fighter and not a quitter.
Within a couple of years, though, he had quit, swapping Westminster for Brussels, where he became the EU's Trade Commissioner. But by 2008, his old frenemy was in trouble. Gordon Brown's government was on the ropes. So, plot twist, it was a peerage for Peter, and back to the cabinet, this time as business secretary and motivator-in-chief.
If I can come back, we can come back.
It wasn't enough, and after defeat in 2010, he put to use his famous scheming and schmoozing skills by starting his own international lobbying firm. So when Sir Keir Starmer was looking for a new ambassador to the US, he called upon the man who'd holidayed with Trump's Treasury Secretary and hung out with the producer of The Apprentice.
The world and his wife knew that Peter Mandelson was going to be a very high-risk appointment. He had history, he had form, this is in his DNA, he does this stuff. He may be a brilliant political operator, but you don't make the gamble of appointing somebody like that, against a backdrop where you can be pretty confident that it's all going to end in tears, unless you've got no choice.
It was those swanky connections that got him to the top, but also brought him down. Last year, embarrassing emails he sent to Jeffrey Epstein were made public, and that meant Number 10 had to oust him from the ambassador's residence. Now, there are suggestions that Peter Mandelson was paid $75,000 by Epstein in the early noughties and gave Epstein access to sensitive British government policy at the height of the 2009 financial crisis, when Mandelson was business secretary. George W. Bush called him Silver Tongue. Donald Trump preferred Sneaky Pete. But for now, neither his charm nor his cunning can spin the 71-year-old Prince of Darkness out of this web.
Chris, welcome back from China.
Thank you. It is good to be back at Westminster, and there's nothing happening here, so I didn't miss much.
In relation to the government amendment, Amendment A, I understand where he is coming from, and can I just describe perhaps a thing which he may wish to see pass through the ISC but can't be made publicly available, and that is...
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite all that President Trump is doing to wreck global stability, our government still spends billions a year on digital technology contracts, including with US tech giants. Will the Secretary of State immediately put together a UK digital sovereignty strategy to build our resilience and security as France and Germany are doing?
Well, we are already investing £500 million in our sovereign AI unit to back our brilliant AI entrepreneurs and startups, because we believe more competition in this area is good for Britain and good for the world.
We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Joanna Baxter.
Question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On World Cancer Day, we're publishing our National Cancer Plan to transform care for patients. It means investment in cutting-edge technology so our exceptional frontline staff can give world-class care. It funds more tests and scans, meaning faster diagnosis and treatment, and tailored treatment in specialist centres. And, Mr. Speaker, we'll cover the cost of every family whose child needs travel for cancer care. Because the focus should only be on recovery, not worrying about money. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Up and down the country, this government is restoring pride in place by investing in our high streets, the beating heart of our communities. Yet in Paisley and Renfrewshire South, the SNP-led Renfrewshire Council has done the opposite, sitting on their hands whilst the owners of the Paisley Centre, who received planning permission to develop the centre some years ago, have sought support to transform our town centre. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it is only the SNP's lack of ambition and failure of leadership that is letting Paisley down, and will he work with me to restore pride in Paisley's town centre?
She's a superb champion for Paisley. Her constituents deserve a Scottish Government that matches her dedication. Mr. Speaker, for our part, we've delivered record funding settlement. We're investing £280 million in Pride in Place across 14 Scottish communities. We've secured shipbuilding on the Clyde for over a decade and just announced an AI growth zone in Lanarkshire. The choice, Mr. Speaker, is clear. A third decade of failure under the SNP or real change for Scotland under Anas Sarwar.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bednall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House will be disgusted by the latest revelations about Jeffrey Epstein. All of us want to see his victims get justice. But the political decision to appoint Epstein's close associate, Peter Mandelson, as Britain's ambassador to Washington goes to the very heart of this Prime Minister's judgment. When he made that appointment, was he aware that Mandelson had continued his friendship even after Epstein's conviction for child prostitution?
Simple question. Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must with the victims of Epstein, and all of our thoughts are with them. Can I also say our thoughts are with all those who lost jobs, savings and livelihoods in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. To learn that there was a cabinet minister leaking sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 crash is beyond infuriating. And I am as angry as the public and any member of this House. Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party. Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Cabinet Secretary, with my support, took the decision to refer material to the police. And there is now a criminal investigation. I've instructed my team to draft legislation to strip Mandelson of his title and wider legislation to remove disgraced peers. And this morning, I've agreed with His Majesty the King that Mandelson should be removed from the list of Privy Councillors on grounds that he's brought the reputation of the Privy Council into disrepute.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister a very specific question. Did he know that Mandelson had continued his friendship with Epstein after the conviction? He says if he knew then what he knows now, but he did know. In January 2024, a journalist from the Financial Times informed the Prime Minister that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house even after that conviction for child prostitution. So did the Prime Minister conveniently forget this fact, or did he decide it was a risk worth taking?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, as the House will expect, we went through a process. There was a due diligence exercise, and then there was security vetting by the security services. What was not known was the depth, the sheer depth and extent of the relationship. He lied about that to everyone for years. And new information was published in September showing the relationship was materially different to what we'd been led to believe. When the new information came to light, I sacked him. But we did go through a due diligence exercise. The points The points that are being put to me were dealt with within that exercise. In response to the humble address this afternoon, I intend to make sure that all of the material is published. Mr. Speaker, the only exemptions are national security, if it prejudice national security. My first duty is obviously to keep this country safe. And when we drafted humble addresses, we always put an exemption for national security. But also anything that will prejudice international relations. Mr. Speaker, you in the House will appreciate that in the course of discussions country to country, there are very sensitive issues of security, intelligence and trade, which cannot be disclosed without compromising the relationship between the two countries or a third country. Mr. Speaker, so that I can be totally open with the House, I should also disclose that the Metropolitan Police have been in touch with my office this morning to raise issues about anything that would prejudice their investigations. We're in discussion with them about that, and I hope to be able to update the House, but I do think I should make that clear to the House at this point, because those discussions are ongoing.
Shall I clear that up?
I'm going to come to the humble address in a moment, but the Prime Minister cannot blame the process. He did know it was on Google. If the Conservative Research Department could find this information out, why couldn't Number 10? On the 10th of September, when we knew this, I asked him at that dispatch box, he gave Mandleson his full confidence at that dispatch box, not once, but twice. He only sacked him after pressure from us. I am asking the Prime Minister something very specific, not about the generalities of the full extent. Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister.
Yes, it did. As a result, various questions were put to him. I intend to disclose to this House all of the national security, prejudice to international relations on one side. I want to make sure this House sees the full documentation, so it will see for itself the extent to which time and time again Mandelson completely misrepresented the extent of his relationship with Epstein and lied throughout the process, including in response to the due diligence.
Mr. Speaker, I think it is shocking what the Prime Minister has just said. How can he stand up there saying that he knew, but he just asked Peter Mandelson if the security vetting was true or false? This is a man who had been sacked from cabinet twice already for unethical behaviour. That is absolutely shocking. And that is why later today, my party will call on the government to release all documents relating to Mandelson's appointment, not just the ones the Prime Minister wants us to see. Because this government is trying to sabotage that release with an amendment to let him choose what we see, the man who appointed Mandelson in the first place. Labour MPs now have to decide if they want to be accessories to his cover-up. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that he won't remove the whip if they refuse to vote for his whitewash amendment?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the first exemption is in relation to anything that could compromise national security. That is not a small matter, and many members on the benches opposite will know precisely why that needs to be in the exemption. When we were drafting humble addresses, when we were sitting over there, we always made sure that exemption was in, because we knew how important it was to the then government. I don't think I've seen a humble address without that in, because and just to be clear, to vote to release something that would prejudice national security is wrong in principle. The second exemption is in relation to things that would prejudice international relations. There will be discussions about security and intelligence and trade, which are highly sensitive to the two countries involved and to third countries. Well, they have to ask themselves whether they want to vote to prejudice our national security. I don't think they do. I don't think, in fairness, that they do. But can I reassure the House, Mr. Speaker? Let me reassure the House. The process for deciding what falls into those categories will not be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by government legal teams. So they will be looking at the question of prejudice. They will be making that decision. The only additional thing I just want to put before the House, because there was a discussion this morning with the Metropolitan Police, is that we are in discussions with them about any material that they're concerned will prejudice their investigation. We're at an early stage of that discussion, but I didn't want to have the House not know that that discussion is going on.
Kevin Benn.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is talking about national security. The national security issue was appointing Mandleson in the first place. And what he has said about the humble address is a red herring. To those Labour MPs who were not there in the last Parliament, let me tell them, humble addresses already exempt genuine national security. This is not about national security, this is about his job security. His amendment lets him withhold anything to do with international relations. But this whole appointment is to do with international relations. So if they're voting for it, they are voting for the cover-up. If the Prime Minister is serious about national security concerns, then he should ask the Intelligence and Security Committee to decide which documents should be released. Will he commit to doing so here and now?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've set out the process. It won't be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by the government legal teams. But I'm pleased that she, I think, now accepts that at least the first exemption that we've written in to the amendment to the petition is the right amendment in relation to prejudice national security. But she and others behind her will understand that because of the breadth of what's asked for, and we're doing everything we can to make sure this is fully transparent and disclosed, but she and those behind her will understand from their own experience in government the sensitivity of information about security and intelligence and trade relations that are inevitably caught in exchanges of the nature that are being asked for. And it is right that anything that prejudices, not touches on, prejudices international relations is protected within the disclosure.
If that was really the case, then he wouldn't mind if the ISC had a look. And let's be clear, he says the Cabinet Secretary makes it non-political, but that doesn't make it independent. What we want is an independent look. The ISC is independent. The Cabinet Secretary works for him. We know that there will be a cover-up because this implicates the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, a protege of Peter Mandelson. The Prime Minister chose to inject Mandelson's poison into the heart of his government on the advice of Morgan McSweeney. His catastrophic lack of judgment, telling us now that he did know, has harmed the special relationship. It has endangered national security. It's not the humble address, it's him. It's compromised our diplomacy, and it has embarrassed our nation. After all of this, does he have the same full confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Peter Mandelson?
Prime Minister. Morgan McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him. But, Mr. Speaker, whatever is slung across this dispatch box, I don't think it's right for the Cabinet Secretary to be denigrated in that way and to suggest that he would be involved in a cover-up. There's the politics that comes over the dispatch boxes, but I honestly don't think it's right to impugn the Cabinet Secretary in that way. And I suspect in their heart of hearts, many on those benches would agree. Mr. Speaker, I'm as angry as anyone about what Mandelson has been up to. The disclosures that have been made this week of him passing sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 financial crash is utterly shocking and appalling. He's betrayed our country. He's lied repeatedly. He's responsible for a litany of deceit. But this moment demands not just anger, but action. And that's why we've moved quickly, referring material to the police, publishing legislation so we can remove titles from disgraced politicians, and stripping Mandelson of his Privy Councillorship. That is what the public expect, and that is what we will do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every month, people across our constituencies are injured by illegal e-bikes being ridden at 30, 40 and 50 miles per hour through our town centres and parks. But for every illegal e-bike that the police seize and crush, another 10 hit our streets because they are too freely available to buy. That's why.
In legal terms, it is quite unlikely that the police, after their inquiry, will be passing stuff to the Director of Public Prosecutions to see if there's a criminal case, not least because this did all happen about 15 years ago. But, you know, a lot of unprecedented things have happened in this case so far, which have been shocking, so we shouldn't necessarily rule that out.
Police have confirmed that Lord Mandelson will face a full criminal investigation into allegations that he leaked market-sensitive information from Downing Street to the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. A government source telling The Times that Scotland Yard detectives are expected to interview Mandelson and take statements from other senior Labour figures as witnesses, including the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. They're also expected to ask the US Department for Justice to release unredacted copies of the released emails as well. It comes after confirmation from the Lords that Mandelson will step down as a peer. Here's the moment it was announced by the Lord Speaker.
My Lords, given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I've decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way.
OK, Adam Bolton, you were a friend of Lord Mandelson. That is how you've described him to me before. And obviously he is now under investigation by the Metropolitan Police. He has resigned himself of his seat in the House of Lords. There are discussions going on in government about how they may formally remove him of his title, which would require new legislation. What are your thoughts here on the man that you still call your friend, or was your friend?
Yeah, no, he's still my friend. I've seen him in the past week or so, though not since the latest drop of Epstein files. I mean, you know, I've been covering politics for 40 years. You cover all sorts of people. And, you know, I would say I still have cordial relations, for example, with Jonathan Aitken, the former cabinet minister who went to prison, who was my boss at one stage at another broadcast company, with Jeffrey Archer, who also went to prison. I mean, it's not for me, I don't think, to judge these people, or I'm certainly not that sort of person. And if you do have relations with them, and also, importantly, if they have, to your knowledge, always behaved, you know, properly and truthfully and honestly to you, I don't see any reason why you should suddenly deny them as friends. That said, you know, the sky has absolutely fallen in on Peter Mandelson because of the revelation that you read out, that while he was a cabinet minister, he was apparently passing government information to Jeffrey Epstein, and also the revelations, although he says he has no recollection of this, that Jeffrey Epstein was paying money to him and his partner Ronaldo da Silva, and we do know that some money was given to Ronaldo da Silva for courses. And, you know, everyone, Peter Mandelson's friends, are all shocked and shattered by this news. That said, I've been in Parliament today. There are many, many people in the Labour Party who've never liked Peter Mandelson because he was a faction fighter on behalf of Tony Blair and Natalie Gordon-Brown. And there are people, both journalists and politicians in the Labour Party, who are quite gleeful about all of this. They're about Peter Mandelson's fall. There are also, of course, people on the opposition benches who are trying to make as much capital as they can out of this, quite quite appropriately. That includes the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. Interesting that Nigel Farage has not been particularly vociferous on this, but then he doesn't tend to wade in on others on personal behaviour to too great an extent. And I think there are pictures of him with Jeffrey Epstein in the past as well. I'm not quite sure of that, but certainly they're circulating on social media. Whether they're genuine or faked, I don't know. And, you know, the long and short of it is that you've got people like David Blunkett who were very sympathetic to, you know, Peter Mandelson's wrong, mistaken friendship with Jeffrey Epstein and his loyalty to him, but who now say, you know, he feels absolutely crushed by the revelations of what looks like, severe misbehaviour in office.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are suggestions. This is the police's job now to look into the emails and what they surmise. And yes, it appears he was passing. I think we can, safely say that it appears, or the allegation is that Mandelson leaked market-sensitive information, economic policy details to Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think, knowing what you do of Lord Mandelson, knowing him personally, did he understand what he was doing? If this is the case, would he have understood the severity of it?
Well, I think we have to be clear, reading those emails, that first of all, as a senior civil servant pointed out to me, he hasn't broken the Official Secrets Act, that none of this information was classified. And at one level, it was the higher gossip. Is the government going to do it? Yes, I think they're going to do it tomorrow, and all of that. And was it market sensitive? I'm not so sure. It was certainly financially sensitive, in as much as it, Jeffrey Epstein was a man who had, basically he was a wealth manager for a lot of rich people and had connections to the JP Morgan Bank. And this information could have been of use to individuals in terms of making money, which is clearly wrong. I'm not sure that's market sensitive. And that's why I think that in legal terms, it is quite unlikely that the police, after their inquiry, will be passing stuff to the Director of Public Prosecutions to see if there's a criminal case, not least because this did all happen about 15 years ago. But, a lot of unprecedented things have happened in this case so far, which have been shocking, so we shouldn't necessarily rule that out.
Under Clause 12 of the bill, this is misconduct in a public office. People who hold public office are defined or commit an offence if they use their office to obtain a benefit, whether for themselves or another person, or to cause another person to suffer a detriment, and they know or ought to know that doing so is a seriously improper act. So it does get quite woolly, doesn't it? But at face value, I can understand why people are saying, if you are advising someone else that the government is looking at selling off assets amid a financial crisis, or that the EU is planning a very large multi-billion, 500 billion euro bailout to prop up the euro, that those are bits of information that you could potentially gain from financially.
No, I mean, I would agree with you entirely. I'm not disputing. I think it was a terrible thing to do. And it would be, I would have thought, that leaking information like this, which incidentally seemed to have come from the centre of government, between Number 10 and other ministries, not from the Treasury, which was actually taking the decisions, that leaking information like this, it would be a clear violation of the ministerial code. And had we known in real time that Peter Mandelson was doing this, I think he would have been sacked anyway. So, I'm not in any way defending it. I'm just saying whether it meets the threshold, that bar of criminality is going to be passed, because effectively Peter Mandelson's actions, I think he was slow, frankly, to realise the extent of the implications and the shock of what was being revealed. And we can see that from the interview in the Times today, that after the first tranche of material, which was fundamentally about his closeness to Jeffrey Epstein, the fact
and how he remained close with him after.
I mean, he
was
was obviously talking to Katie Balls about, possibly how he could find a route back into public life and all that. Subsequent to that, I think this stuff about what he was doing when he was a minister and what he shouldn't have been doing, that's finished all of that. And he has realised it, because, perhaps slowly, but the 2 steps he took, resigning within hours from the Labour Party and then today retiring from the House of Lords, are, small comfort, but they are the right things to have done, and they have taken some of the pressure off Sir Keir Starmer.
Would he have done that before Starmer did that to him, booted him out of the Lords or forced him out of the Labour Party?
Well, he has done.
Okay.
So
was that driven by that being the right thing to do, or was that driven by the fact that he wanted to get there before Starmer got there first?
Well, I think probably both. I mean, as we are on resigning from the Labour Party, that was a personal decision, and the argument, had he not resigned on Sunday night, then we would have seen argument and pressure and emergency meetings on the Monday, with the Prime Minister having to take the decision. So I think he spared him that. On resigning from the Lords, he has done it now. I mean, he had already gone on leave of absence. He was already saying publicly and to friends that he had no intention of ever playing an active part in the Lords. But while you're on leave of absence, you have the option of returning. What he's done today is retired where you don't have the option of returning. I mean, it's what normally people do when they become too old or too incapacitated, inactive. So he's wiped out the activity of the Lords. What he is still technically, he still has the title of the Lord. Now, taking that away would be a major parliamentary upheaval and distraction. It's not as easy as people say. That's why it hasn't been done since the First World War. And I suspect that the government now won't act on that immediately. What they will say is, we will have further reforms of the House of Lords and membership of the House of Lords coming down the line, which will include a Sackham clause. But there is an issue here, which is that there is a political implication if, whatever you think of the House of Lords, if one House of Parliament can vote to sack members of the other House, you can see where that could go.